So you may have caught the video earlier last month at the very end of the year talking about the top games for 2023 as a whole that I know about that are launching in the next, say 3 or 4 months. But more immediately and more wallet concerning is what's actually going on in January, because some of those were February and March. Let's break it down. Let me tell you several games that you need to be aware of so you can spend wisely, budget wisely, and avoid wisely if so necessary, so that you can have a good January on crowdfunding. Let's do this. So we're going to start with one that, just like with the other video, the one that I think I am most anticipating. I am anticipating also it to be launching in January. At the time of me filming this video, nothing has been announced, so I could be wrong. But Marvel United Multiverse. What else are they going to bring in terms of the CMON plastic miniature chibi multiverse combinatorial system that we, sort of know from the what if world, essentially, from other universes where other things have happened to affect things like, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Aunt May doesn't die. And so how does that affect what he does as, the hero or not? All of a sudden Punisher dies and he becomes Ghost Rider instead of someone else. Those sorts of what if questions. And the other what if in this question scenario is going to be, how much more do I need? No, that's not the question. I'm going to get a bunch of it. But the real question is going to be, what are the mechanics? Because they say flat out on the Kickstarter preview page that there are going to be new rules. How much more can you do? Because you can't do much more with the 4 symbols, and I can't see them adding symbols because that would make some of the other stuff obsolete. But what other mechanics are you going to bring in? Because the villains have really been the high point of this series. You need to give more on the hero side of things. And even then, like half the hero decks are generic. And so that's the bigger issue. What can you disseminate? How unique can you make it? Or can you avoid the power creep that we saw a little bit of with X-Men? Not going to say it's in a bad way, because I would say that, underpowered in the first time around Marvel United Avengers, because that's what I call it. And I would be happy to get rid of some of the Marvel United Avengers if I knew that some of this was going to be that much better, because I was just playing it the other day with my kids, and 6 boxes at a time is not manageable. I would also really kill for a storage collection system instead of me just randomly chucking everything back in. It takes time to set up and tear down, and that's becoming the biggest barrier when you have all those, because I've got one kid that wants one from the original X-Men box. I want to be someone else. My oldest wants to be someone from the original stretch goal box, and so then he grabs a couple scenarios or a couple sheets from the original, and so we got like 4 or 5 things going at the same time. So what can you bring me, CMON? 6,000 people already following on the Kickstarter pre-launch preview page. We're going to see what happens, what the price point looks like, and how much more of it I end up getting. So that's obviously why it's number 1. Number 2 here isn't going to be a surprise to anyone as well. Number 2 here is Andromeda's Edge, Luke Laurie, coming to us from Dwellings of Eldervale, sitting right here. And that's going to be the spacefaring-esque game where you are going out, pushing your spaceships as your workers, exploring, colonizing, developing, and then having a completely different action when you bring them back in. The dynamic of that, this is what I thought Voidfall was going to be, or what I want the Voidfall to be in the first place, as a dwellings in space, essentially. A spirit island in space, only it's not cooperative. That's the only thing Voidfall really has that, has still kept me on the questionable late backing button at times. The other question to go along with this is, what does the price scheme look like? What does the deluxeification scheme look like? What is that going to bring to us? Because you've seen a lot of FOMO, no, not a lot of FOMO, I'd say, but a lot of actual feeling like they missed out on the retail side of things, because also the retail side of things was significantly higher with Dwellings. It was. The legendary price on crowdfunding was almost the price of the standard at retail. Are we going to see something very similar that way? With some, and this is the part I hated about the Dwellings, gameplay content at the legendary that you had to get the legendary for, you couldn't get the deluxe, and they split it up at retail much better, but on the crowdfunding you couldn't do that. So take that for what you will as well. But that is the other one of the things launching this month. Am I going to be backing those? That's going to be a hard, probably heavy thinking about. Yes. So that's why it's the second one on this list. The third one on this list, again, is something very, very similar hitting home. It's Huang. You may think of Huang as Yellow and Yangztee, the remake. It's Yellow and Yangztee reprinted. The Kinesia game, head-to-head, Tigris and Euphrates, Samurai, Blue Lagoon, the ones that are all thought of in that line of tile-laying greatness. I love Yellow and Yangtze. I love the wooden component aesthetic to it. They're going with a plastic, and it looks like, at least based on the very few Kickstarter or GameFound crowdfunding page pictures, that it looks like cardboard. And they've said they're going to do standard and miniature. But what does standard actually mean? I thought I saw rumors of going to have something additional on top of that, because years ago there was also the announcement of an expansion that never came to fruition called the Royal Palace. Is it going to have something like that? And if I have the original and I don't want to get the blinged out plastic because it's not going to match, is there going to be something for someone like me, or am I going to have to try and get back in at a non-double digit price point? And that's going to leave me sort of with not a great taste in my mouth, because I love that game. Never going to leave my collection. Is it easy to play? No. Do I prefer, and is it easier to teach Babylonia to other people? Yeah. Does it find a spot in and of itself separately than all those other ones? Absolutely yes. And so that's why I think, even though there's only about 5,000 people following the GameFound page right now, you're going to see a lot more people interested, depending on those aspects that I laid down on what the final funding is. So that's why it's also on the list. Next up, we have Among Cultists as number 4. Among Cultists, as you may guess by the namesake, is a variation of the video game Among Us. It's taking that port and doing it to the tabletop scene as a social deduction game where you are either cultists or investigators, where you either are dead or alive. Now that sounds very straightforward, but you can actually be dead, be a ghost without even knowing it initially, because you're dealt the dead card instead of the alive card, and you're going to have different powers that are going to be available to you as opposed to your alive ones, and you're obviously trying to figure out who the cultist is. It's playing 4 to 8 player count, and if you are playing anything less than 6 or less, you have 1 cultist. At 7 or 8, you're going to have 2. And it gives me the sort of vibe of a social deduction, more complex, more entertaining game of Shadows over Camelot, without the downsides of Shadows over Camelot in that way, because there's also not player elimination. And that's the other really appealing thing as a whole. Their website actually has 8 different translations of the rulebook. It's about a 20-page rulebook, but it's very easy read, and so you can get a good sense of what it's going to be bringing, how it's going to be slightly different, and the nuances that are going to go along with all of those asymmetric things that I mentioned when it launches in January 9. Next up, we have the other interesting twist on, something we've never really seen before from Lucky Duck Games, and this is called Once Upon a Line. And now, why is it called that? It's called Once Upon a Line because it's going to be a scratch-off game. Not that kind of scratch-off game, but a scratch-off game. It's sort of this post-apocalyptic world where you're one of the survivors trying to reconstruct the new world, but it's going to be a narrative game played over several chapters where your hero's using actions to play out the board of scratch-off ink. Uncover hidden words, take the corresponding cards, reveal the next part of the story, and sort of get traps, riddles, anagrams, palindromes, things like that are going to be having to be solved before you scratch off the very last line. It reminds me sort of more of a Divinus in a slightly different way, if you will. It gives me that vibe as a whole. There's not a whole lot of other information out there right now, and it's from Perla and Fracas, and going through Lucky Duck's involvement as well. So if it's purely a word-based game, that's going to be a different market. But if it has some of those legacy aspect campaign style things as well, how well does that play out? Because we're seeing something new, we're seeing something different, and that's always experimentally encouraging and scary at the same time. So how willing are you to go out on a limb in that way? Next up, we have a new game in the lines of Hero Realms. We have Hero Realms Dungeons. This is going to be launching on the 10th. This was initially supposed to be launching last year, but it got delayed, and now we're seeing sometime in 2023, 6 new characters that are going to be available for dungeons, adventure packs with more skill and ability trees, as well as a different market for PvP, as well as cooperative play, and apparently needs a new game board. There's going to be a game board going along with it, and 12 counter and dungeon campaign for 1 to 5 players. And as always with Wise Wizard Games, you're going to be getting some exclusive promo cards a la the Star Realms that they've put out in the previous, as well as the Hero Realms. So it's going to be offering more. Do you need more of it? How much different is this going to be? More campaign, more market. Usually those are a good thing, but depends on your mileage, may vary obviously in this case as well. So that's going to be launching. Also on the 17th, we have Hollywood 1947, again, which is another social deduction game where you're going to have one of 3 factions that you're going to be choosing from while you're trying to create movies. There are communists hidden alongside patriots or rising stars. And so you're going to be one of those 3 factions trying to produce the movies in the way and in the order which you need them done to win the end game scoring conditions. You have a different job as well as the loyalty, including jobs that are screenwriters, gaffers, directors, actors, editors, and other such film jobs. This is the 5th in the standalone line of games from Facade Games. With the other ones you may recognize of Salem 1692, Tortuga, Deadwood, Bristol, all of those. So it's in that line. That's a very good pedigree. And so if this holds up like any of those, now again, people have their personal preferences on which social deduction games with which aspects they like over the other one, with those differences between them, because they are definitely significantly different. This is going to be another twist on it. Your jobs will affect what cards are in your hand, and then who gets special information. You get to choose to skip your job and instead can roll the dice that are in the game. And if you end up getting stars on your dice, you get to add a card into the movie. Shuffle up all the cards, see what the movie's predilection and overall theme is in terms of which faction. So we're going to see what this one does. This one's going to be very interesting. Again, very solid background, very solid pedigree, and this is going to be launching on the 17th. Another one launching on the 17th is Aegis, the Combining Robots. You may remember this as sort of like a Power Rangers-esque robot combination where you're taking parts of one and you're creating your own little robot in the Megazord style of things. Now this is coming back with Season 2. What you're doing is you're creating, using your action points, of combining these robots in a tactics-based game where you're trying to basically go head-to-head in a robot fighting tournament, right? Who hasn't wanted to do that? Dozens of new robots, streamlined learning and playing for better tactical depth. There's a new solo mode, a significantly developed solo mode, and a arena mode where you're going up constantly against however many you can knock down before you're eventually knocked out. 2-player drafting rules, as well as printed terrain. So combine both boxes if you want. Again, relatively well received the first time around. Sort of an under the radar indie hit that a lot of people overlooked. Went without a lot of hype from that side. So we're going to see if the Season 2 can capitalize on Season 1's previous success and what that ultimately looks like as well when it launches on the 17th. Also, towards the end of the month, another one that was supposed to launch last year, on the 24th, we are getting Batman Escape from Arkham Asylum. And now this is not what the namesake might suggest, is that you are actually the supervillains in a semi-cooperative game going semi-cooperatively, trying to help each other out, but also having hidden objectives that are going to give you a slight advantage over your compatriots in order to either escape from the asylum first or eventually be locked down and, recaptured back into your cells. And there's going to be an escalating alarm system that you're going to be going from green to yellow to red. That's going to increase the difficulty as the game goes along and makes it progressively harder and harder to achieve your objectives. And some of you might just have to be the first one to escape. Some of you might have to just sow chaos. Some of you are going to have different aspects that you're going to be having to do in order to do the semi-cooperative. And I have mixed feelings about that. The other mixed feelings I have about it right now is it has a 30-minute playtime. So can this give enough tactical depth in 30 minutes, or is that not representative of what it actually is? Or is it just going to be too light as well and too straightforward? It's coming from Night Models, or Night Games, which is Night Models, who put out the Harry Potter game and more focused on the resin miniatures than the actual giving it a significant depth of a tactical nature with the Harry Potter. So which of those is it going to be? Time will tell, but it's going to be an interesting one to watch when it launches over on GameFound. The last one here we have also launching on the 10th, and this is Goes Vadis in combination with Gussie Gorillas. Now, I'm going to talk about mainly about Goes Vadis because that one's the one that really has captured me in a 3 to 8 player style. Slowly go up the chain of command, trying to become the zoo mascot with asymmetric character, animal abilities, trying to outmaneuver, politically speaking, the other animals, trying to be the best one at the top when the game ends. Bribe, deduct, reason, outplay, outperform in those aspects. Now, it's a classic revision of Goes Vadis, which is a Knizia game from several years ago with a 6.5 rating on Board Game Geek. So the question is going to be, how much better is it going to stand up to the test of time, especially at the revamped low 3-player count? Because again, with these large ranges, I always worry about the extremes, right? I worry about 1 to 4. I worry about 1 a little bit. I worry about 4 a little bit. One of those tends to be much stronger, right? Like Too Many Bones is a really great 1-player game. Not many people say they want to play Too Many Bones at a 4-player game. Same thing with Mage Knight, right? And I worry about this with the social deduction games, right? A lot of social deduction games suffer at the low play counts, like 3, and that's why a lot of them start, especially as we saw with Among Cultists, at 4, because the dynamic doesn't quite get there until you get those middle player counts of like 5, 6. And so that's going to be the question. There's going to be a new, I believe what they said, 6 and 7. Actually, I think I said 3 to 8, maybe 3 to 7, just to clarify that. 6 and 7 player board that's going to be additionally going to give this a little bit more legs and give a little bit more dynamic. Going to be from the makers of Trailblazer, Bitewing Games, and so we're going to see what this combination as well when it launches with Gussie Gorillas, which is a whole nother game in and of itself as a whole. So those are the ones right now to know in January. Budget accordingly. February also has a couple of other bigger names. The reprint of Count Tussle, the new Street Fighter game, founders from the makers of Ice, as well as Stone Saga from Mythwind and OMM. So, I mean, there's going to be plenty coming. It's just going to be what else pops up along the way, and when does it pop up, and what does it look like, and how much enticement does it actually have on a week-by-week, day-by-day basis. So, there you go. Games to watch out for 2023 on crowdfunding. There you go. Boom. Would you be interested in watching a video about this from retail? I'm thinking about doing a retail one as well. So if that is of interest as well, let me know in the comment section down below. Subscribe if you haven't. I'm trying to get to 10K by as soon as possible. 7K first, though. That's all I got. I'm done. My kids are watching Home Alone in the background right now. I need to go check that out with them for like the 7th time. So, kids just want to watch the same things over and over again. Makes my life easier, I guess. Peace out. Stay classy.